In this video, we will be replacing the front brake caliper in this 2003 Toyota Camry. To prep this vehicle, I have raised it up slightly and supported it with safety stands. I have the parking brake set, and I have wheel chocks behind the rear tires. Our hubcap pulls straight off, and with a 21mm socket we can remove our lug nuts. And we'll give our wheel just a little bit of persuasion. And with that wheel removed, we can see our braking system. If we take a little closer look, we can see our rotor, which is the centermost disc. Around the rotor, we have our caliper, and inside that caliper, we have our brake pads. Taking a look at the back side of our caliper, we have two caliper mounting bolts. We're going to apply a little bit of Amsoil metal protector to these bolts to help aid in the removal process. And these are both 14mm bolts. And we can then work that caliper off. We will be replacing this caliper, but for the time being, we're going to hang it out of the way. Next, we want to find our caliper bracket mounting bolts. And again, a little Amsoil metal protector will help these come out a lot easier. And these are 17mm bolts. And when you take the last bolt out, that bracket will fall, so make sure you support it. And those pads will come out with that bracket. And then to remove the rotor, I'm first going to start by hitting it with a soft base hammer. And because this one is on there good, we'll go to plan B. So near the center, I have a couple threaded holes. I'm going to apply a little bit of Amsoil metal protector. Then I'll install a metric 8 1.25 by 40mm bolt in each of these locations, making sure that I start them by hand so I don't cross thread them. I'm then going to tighten them down a little bit, give it another whack with the hammer, tighten them down a little bit more, give them another whack with the hammer, and so on and so forth until it pops off. And then we'll shift our focus back over to the caliper. On the back end of the caliper, we have one bolt. This is our banjo bolt. When we remove this, there will be brake fluid that comes out. If we take a look at our new caliper, we can also see that banjo bolt. Now on this bolt, we have two brass washers. Those washers will need to replace the existing ones on our existing caliper. Additionally, I have two caliper bolts that I will be removing. By doing this, it will make our installation a little bit easier. And that will separate our caliper from the mounting bracket. And I'll start with a little metal protector on that banjo bolt. And this is a 14mm bolt. Now I do have a drip pan underneath this. So we can see one of those washers on there. Work this out. We can see that other washer is still in the caliper, so that's good. On my new one, I can remove that bolt, make sure one of those washers stays on there. There we go. And we're going to start that by hand. And this new one is an 11 millimeter. And I just nice and gently work that on, making sure my little prong gets in there. This then needs to be torqued to 22 foot-pounds. And we can wipe up any brake fluid there. And we'll hang that up, back out of the way. Using Amsoil brake and parts cleaner, I'm going to clean both the hub as well as the backing plate, making sure to get off all of the brake fluid that may have dripped on it. I'm also going to take a wire brush and clean off any rust that has built up on that wheel hub. If you do remember, that wheel was difficult to get off, so we're going to remedy that so it doesn't happen again. And when that dries, we are going to come back with Amsoil heavy duty metal protector. This will leave a film which will help prevent corrosion and rust in the future, thus eliminating the difficulty in removing the wheel assembly. And if you have had a caliper failure, which is probably why you are replacing it, you will most likely be replacing the rotor and brake pads at the same time. With our new rotor, we want to make sure to clean both sides of it with brake and parts cleaner. These rotors are shipped from the factory with oil on them to prevent them from rusting. Thus, we need to clean off that oil. And we can then add that rotor with one lug nut located towards the bottom to help hold it in place. And to prep our new caliper, we will be applying some brake parts lubricant to the mating surface between the caliper bracket and the brake hardware. And we can then center our new hardware on the caliper bracket and make sure that gets seated fully. And we can install our bracket, starting these bolts by hand. And these will be tightened down to 79 foot-pounds. Next, we're ready to install our new brake pads. These should slide in nice and easily. And before we install the caliper, we are going to add just a little bit of grease to the edge of the piston, which comes in contact with the brake pad. We're also going to place a little bit of grease on the ears where the other side comes in contact with the brake pad. And then we can slip that around those brake pads and start our bolts. And these 14 millimeter bolts will be torqued to 25 foot-pounds. The next step is to bleed the brakes. Because we did open up that braking system and replace the caliper, there is air in the braking system. We want to get rid of that air. I will be using a brake bleed tool to accomplish this, although you could do it manually. And we also want to step on that brake pedal a few times to reset that caliper piston. That should firm up pretty quickly. And at this point we can clean up our tools, replace the wheel and the hubcap, and go for a test drive.